By far, the most common mistake artists make is failing to get the proportions accurate when drawing. We're told that we can check proportions by measuring, and you'll see artists holding their brushes like this, supposedly trying to measure their subjects. But there are multiple reasons why this doesn't always work. And before you even try to measure, there's something really fundamental you need to know about proportion. And once you get this, you'll be able to draw accurately without measuring.
So what do artists actually do when they measure? First of all, you need to hold your arm straight out in front of you with your elbow locked out. Then, with one eye closed, you tilt your head and you look down your arm at the top of your brush. You hold the top of your brush next to the top of your subject, and you slide your thumb down the brush to a different point. You can then compare this unit of measurement against the rest of your subject. After measuring the distance from the top to the waist, I can see that it's approximately in the middle. That's all very well for checking vertical relationships. But then how do we check the width in relation to the height? Because this is what proportion actually is. When we're drawing or painting from life, we're taking an object we can see in the three-dimensional world and we're converting it into shapes on a flat surface.
What are the dimensions of a flat surface? Height and width. So for a drawing to be accurate, we need to get the width right in relation to the height.
There is one way we can do this by measuring. If you place your canvas right next to your subject, then standing back and viewing your work from a distance, you can trace across from the top and bottom so that your image appears the exact same size. This is known as the sight size method, which is taught in most of today's atelier schools. If you remain on exactly the same spot on the floor, you can take a horizontal measurement from your subject and the width will appear the same on your image.
But you can only use sight size in very specific circumstances.
In a busy art class, you don't have the luxury of placing your canvas next to your model and standing back.
The other major drawback of measuring with a pencil or brush is it's not the same as measuring something with a ruler on a flat surface.
The slightest movement of your body, like tilting your brush or pencil, or a millimetre slip of your thumb, can make something wrong with your drawing.
So you can never be sure if a measurement you've taken is completely accurate. The only way you can be absolutely certain a shape is in proportion is when you can actually see it. And I'm about to show you how this is possible without needing to measure.
With this cast, I can check the width of the mouth by seeing how it lines up vertically underneath the eye. But then how do I check the distance from the eye down to the mouth? Or the distance from the mouth across to the ear? To do this, I need to visualize this area as a box or a rectangle with a height and a width. Once I can see this box, I can compare it with my subject. And I don't need to measure it to see that the box on my painting needs to be wider.
Remember, there are only two dimensions on a flat surface, height and width. This means there can only ever be two things wrong with any shape. It's either too tall or too wide. So the difficult thing about drawing isn't actually measuring. The really challenging thing we've got to be able to do when we draw is to first see the shape we're supposed to be measuring.
The best way of learning how to convert the complicated 3D world into flat geometric shapes is to practice with subjects where the shapes are easier to see. Artists have been using casts to learn to draw since Renaissance times. Because they're white, this makes it easier to see the shadow shapes. I'm going to start by placing the top and bottom. This is to determine the scale. Next, I'm placing the sides, trying to find the width in relation to the height. So the first shape I'm looking for is a box around the whole subject. I'm then placing lines from the shoulders down to the bottom of the cast, paying really close attention to their angle. As well as the height to width ratio, angles are the other major component of drawing. Once again, there can only ever be two things wrong with an angle. It's either too steep or not steep enough. So checking angles isn't difficult. The more challenging thing is simplifying your subject into lines with angles that you can check. Here, I'm placing a line for the bottom of the thigh, creating a simple trapezoid shape which envelops the whole cast. Then I'm placing a horizontal line for the waist, approximately 2/3 of the way down in between the top and bottom. Now I'm placing the right side of the waist, about halfway between the left and right. I can then carve out the negative space below the right shoulder. Next, I'm indicating the angle and position of the spine. When I squint to simplify the shadows of the back, I see that they form a zigzag shape a bit like a reverse letter N. Or do you see how the light shape on the left side of the upper back forms a triangle? This gives me a definite shape that I can check to see if it's the right proportion. This is exactly what I mean by simplifying my subject into flat shapes. And it's the whole point of this video. The skill of drawing isn't about measuring. The real secret to accurate drawing is learning to see the shapes you're supposed to be measuring. I'm now massing in all the darks, and I've ended up painting over some of my drawing. So once again, I'm having to redraw it. This brings me to the other major problem with measuring. It just takes too long. It might be okay when you're working in pencil and you have limitless time, but oil paint is a messy liquid and it's much harder to control. If you spend ages trying to create a precisely measured drawing, you'll always be scared of putting down paint and ruining it. In order to become a confident painter, you need to be able to correct and adjust the drawing after the paint has been applied. Next, I'm blocking in the lights and the shadows. This isn't yet a perfectly accurate drawing. At this stage, I just need to make sure that there isn't anything majorly wrong with any of the larger shapes. But it's already clearly recognisable as my subject. From here, I'll start modelling the form, adding the subtle shifts in value in between the lights and the shadows. And I'll keep making small adjustments, fine-tuning the shapes. Drawing is a process of correcting mistakes. So don't expect to be able to measure something, then place it perfectly the first time you put something down. You need to put something down before you can compare it with your subject. Then ask yourself, does this shape need to be taller or wider? Or if it's an angle, is it steeper or shallower? Here, I'm adjusting the right side of the back, making it a little steeper. In all the years I've been teaching, whenever I point out a particular shape to one of my students, they can always see what's wrong with it. So the difficult thing about drawing isn't measuring. The thing my students always struggle with is first seeing the shape they need to measure. This is why I created my Introduction to Mass Drawing course, which you'll find over on my Patreon channel. This includes a whole series of specially designed exercises that will help you master this principle of seeing shapes so you can draw accurately without measuring. Check out the link at the end of this video to find out more. That's all for now. Until next time, thanks for watching and good luck with your painting.